Warhammer 40,000 Boltgun is a game I've been looking forward to ever since the initial announcement, as the idea, it just seemed like such an obvious one, that is, take this sci-fi staple of the tabletop gaming world and then combine it with an old school and 90s first-person shooter design. The pairing seems like a match made in heaven. The question though, does this pairing pay off? Well, that's what I'm here to find out. My name's Alex and this is PlayStation Corner, and if you enjoyed the video today, consider subscribing, it helps out the channel a huge amount. The story unfolds with a simple cinematic that sets the stage for the adventure ahead, and that is in response to alarming readings from a world in the local system. The Mechanicus, they dispatch you and your team on a crucial mission of investigation. Accompanying you is a helpful servo skull, providing infallible assistance by highlighting key items and offering contextual information. Upon reaching your destination, of course, disaster occurs and your team is decimated on entry, leaving you as the lone survivor. Things, of course, here go from bad to worse, and you find yourself confronted by an overwhelming gathering with the forces of chaos. There's no choice here, basically, but to face them head on. I think fans will like its spin on the universe. It gives you just enough reason to get out there and kill everything. Boltgun is a fantastic blend of classic boomer shooter elements alongside modern innovations, resulting in a unique experience. From the moment you start the game, you're immediately equipped with the powerful chainsaw melee option, which is an absolute joy to use. Swinging at enemies and then rapidly tapping to unleash devastating attacks, it's just immensely satisfying, and witnessing these enemies disintegrate before your eyes just adds this extra layer of gratification. To complement the chainsaw, the game actually features as well a lock-on system for it. It allows you to home in on enemies like a missile. This is going to be a crucial part of your skill set, but as opening moments go, few games capture a character's strength and ability so well. It then evolves from here to the game's firepower, and that is the game's title, Boltgun. This is uncovered with a suitably over-the-top sequence, and yeah, just weapons continue to flow in from here. Really makes sense though the game is called Boltgun, because it was my favourite weapon in the game. The feedback is by far the most satisfying, and it really delivers a huge amount of bullets each second, especially when paired with the occasional special ammo that you may find in this world. There is just absolutely no stopping you. Expect alongside this shotguns, rocket launchers, a few other options, all in keeping of course with the universe. Boltgun's been designed as a game to overwhelm you with enemy count as frequently as possible, so really understanding when a weapon is best at leverage is kinda half the battle here with the challenge. The enemies range from basic cannon fodder to towering bosses, and some of them just pack some incredible power. When it comes to those enemies, I wouldn't worry too much about tactics from them. It's more a case of the game's going to throw as many of them at you all at once, and that really makes sense because the AI here is understandably relatively basic. This is highlighted during frequent purge moments. It's a classic idea really. The game locks you in an area and says kill them all so you can move on. And yeah, what follows is the game throwing a ridiculous number of foes your way. I will admit towards the end game I was getting some burnout on this formula. It's a good 8 to 10 hour journey, but if you took this a couple of missions a night, I think it would be the perfect amount of, mass murder. It's amazing as well how quickly you get comfortable with the controls, and before you know it, you're going to be sipping all over the place, chainsawing, shooting, and evading incoming fire. It's also worth noting health does not regenerate and bullets are not unlimited, so ensure you are looking for items in the environment. I really like the design of each enemy. It drops a tiny bit of health or shield, making the killing actually necessary if you want to survive. It also then keeps you moving constantly because you need to head to where they fell and pick up that item. It's rarely a game that will give you a chance to camp basically, and I learned that the hard way because the game introduced flying enemies and they crushed me when they got me in a corner that I thought was a smart play. It's not all perfect, however. The purge moments are perhaps a little too frequent in my opinion. It goes from being this fun diversion to a predictable turn of events every time you enter a large room. Additionally, the level design does have some issues that frustrate me. Given the influences, the levels are surprisingly large and they're often not linear. I must admit on more than a few occasions I found myself lost in the world as I was backtracking to find the next door or location that was needed. The game's basically built around finding keys to unlock the next doorway, but yeah, it makes sense, but I think a little more guidance on the objective could have cut out some of the frustration. Thankfully though, these moments do tend to be short-lived and you can't help but be entertained as the next batch of enemies head your way. The last thing I want to mention then is such a simple factor, but perhaps my favourite, and that is our lead feels incredibly heavy, not slow, but the camera movement, the force at which we land, it makes you feel like you truly are this incredibly equipped warrior without sacrificing the quality of the gameplay, and that's perhaps the most impressive thing they pulled off here. Overall, Warhammer fans, I see very few reasons why you wouldn't want to jump into the gameplay of Boltgun, and maybe some will note the lack of online multiplayer or co-op, but I think that is fairly reflected in the price points. Visually, I love it. It's a nice blend of 90s pixel shooter, but with additions that could only be achieved now. Enemies have that flat look to them, and seeing them rotate with 4K clarity is honestly a little jarring initially, but once you start shooting, that's where we can see the evolvement. Basically, these enemies explode into a visual of blood, and then the chainsaw has some particularly nice reaction animations from those around us. The world then packs a nice amount of variety, and I was surprised to encounter some absolutely massive screen-filling enemies. I've kept a good portion of the footage today to the first 8 or so missions because uncovering what was to come really was half the fun here. Guns in are incredibly satisfying to witness with bullet trails that are easy to identify, and I love that element because there's a huge amount of satisfaction in kind of weaving between that incoming fire while watching your tracks perfectly head towards their targets. Audio then is another winner. I do think transparently the soundtrack could have been a little heavier at points, but it still has highlights. But I do love the sound effect field. Weapons sound as brutal as you would expect. The world around you packs just enough environmentally to feel alive. And again, the highlight must be your own movement. Think that metallic weight. It is heard with each footstep. And that's a large contributing factor towards selling our own individual tank-like nature. It's especially impressive following a large jump, and there's a moment where you basically just freeze in spots. Overall, for me, Boltgun has mostly delivered. It's a fast-paced shooter that uses the reference material well, and it has you questioning why haven't they done this before. Hopefully it's not the last we see from this team, because overall, I think they capture the universe and add enough modern ideas that it feels absolutely unique. The gunplay is solid, the chainsaw and homing in is even better, and then they feel each room ready for you to purge. The main issue I have is some frustrating level design that really did have me lost in a few instances that definitely left me a little frustrated. That said though, like Warhammer fans, boomer shooter fans, this is going to be a game you should absolutely add to your library, and it is a great 8 out of 10 from me. All it honestly needs is the occasional bit of guidance when you do find you are lost, maybe a clue or the servo skill could direct you, and this would be an easy 9. So will you be checking out Boltgun? And let me know in the comments. With that, hit subscribe, join us here for reviews and deals weekly, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.